Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's another Mango Spaces session. Today, we are talking about taxes. We'll be looking at how to simplify eTIMS for you as a taxpayer and the challenges you've been facing and how our expert from Digitax can help you be compliant. My name is Joe Maniki. I am not new on Mango Spaces. I'm a regular member, especially every time we are talking about taxes. I am a tax practitioner with over 10 years of experience. And our guest this evening is an IT expert who will be breaking down aspects of eTIMS and simplifying them for taxpayers who are still trying to onboard eTIMS and share with you solutions for any challenges that you may have faced so far. Our expert is Caine Wanjao, and I will allow Caine to introduce himself. You will introduce yourself, Caine, and give us a background of your experience, what you've done before, and when you started Digitax, and what you're currently doing at Digitax.
Thank you very much, Joe, and good evening to all our listeners. Glad to be on Mango Spaces and looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have today. I have a background in technology. My career of about 15 years has focused mostly on technology. And that was actually the point at which I got interested in eTIMS as a way to streamline the whole process around tax filing from a technology standpoint. But even going way back, it's something that had always been back of my mind because when I started out in business back in 2011, when a client asked me for a tax invoice, I remember having to go and buy an ETR, get trained on how it works. And for those of you who remember, we had to be given, it's almost like a cheat code with how you specifically engage with the device and how you generate an invoice. And if you made a mistake, unwinding it was almost next to impossible. When I first interacted with an ETR or an electronic tax register, at the back of my mind, I felt there's an opportunity to improve the user experience and have something that the everyday business person can engage with and interact with easily. So when eTIMS came along as a policy at the beginning of 2023, given this is something that I had experienced and had been thinking about as the years went about, I felt it was a good time for me to think about starting Digitax to essentially simplify tax compliance. And that's what we do. We're basically a software platform that simplifies tax compliance end to end. We make it easier and faster for businesses to generate their tax invoices, as the case may be. And our slogan is actually less taxing. Some people interpret it as less taxes, but it's actually basically making it a less burdensome experience. That's been my Digitax journey to date in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ken, for that introduction. I know that you've worked in the tech space in different organizations, but we will park that for tonight. We will specifically dwell on the Digitax and how it's helping taxpayers simplify their onboarding and compliance with eTIMS. And maybe just to simplify it for our listeners, I will probably just give a legal framework on eTIMS. And eTIMS, for any layman joining us, is the Electronic Tax Invoice Management System. We should not assume that everyone understands these terms, so we try to make it as simple for even people who are not in accounting tech to be able to understand. And basically, Kenya introduced eTIMS through different legal avenues, and one was in the VAT Act, Section 34. There has been always a provision that a taxpayer should maintain an electronic tax system that can be verified by the Revenue Authority to be able to determine their invoicing and the revenue that they have earned. One. Two, there was the VAT Electronic Tax Invoice Regulations of 2020, which introduced the need to invoice through an electronic system. And that birthed what started initially as a tax invoice management system, eTIMS, which came with the eTIMS devices. Then Finance Act 2023 also introduced a requirement that for income tax purposes, only expenses that have been supported by electronic tax invoices would be allowed against your revenue before arriving at the taxable amount. That actually went full cycle, meaning that a taxpayer needed to have electronic tax invoicing management system for VAT purposes and two, for income tax purposes as well from January 2024. So that is a brief background on the legal framework of how eTIMS came into being. We will request Caine maybe just to help us understand what Digitax is doing in the implementation of eTIMS. You can help us understand how some of these tech companies get to be approved by KRA. You can start from there, and then you will walk us through the integration process into eTIMS. So you can start by telling us about the approval system, and then you walk us through the integration process eTIMS.
In terms of Digitax and its role in eTIMS and electronic tax invoicing in general, we are licensed by the Kenya Revenue Authority to provide eTIMS solutions, and this comes in various forms. In our case as Digitax, we offer a platform that allows you to choose which solution makes most sense for you as a business. We have an Android application, we have a point of sale solution, we have our online portal. You can also integrate your system to eTIMS through the Digitax platform. So we provide an integration platform. The licensing process is it's pretty straightforward in the sense that KRA have an open licensing regime around eTIMS, and they do provide their own solutions as well. There are a lot of taxpayers today who use eCitizen, for example, for eTIMS. You also have quite a number of registered and licensed entities that KRA provide a list for. The process is typically you'd express interest and get access to the technical documentation for integration. You'd then build your solution and showcase it to the KRA team. What is important is to show that one, you've understood the technical requirements. You've also catered for each and every situation and scenario that KRA envisions eTIMS should be used for. And then, of course, you have to pass the legal tests in addition to the technical tests. Are you a Kenyan entity? Are you duly constituted? The requirements have changed slightly from the time we got licensed back in 2023. But the general state of things is that you have to show that you're a business that can offer and support eTIMS. And then once carrier satisfied, they license you. And once they license you, then you are free to go and market your solution. So that's the space we play in as Digitax. And so far, we've been in the market for about 16 months. So because we were licensed in November 2023. So what you tend to find is companies that wish to offer a software solution do go and get licensed directly by KRA. However, for businesses that don't have e-invoicing or eTIMS as their core business, they'll then want to look for a licensed integrator to basically provide them the solution. So that's the space Digitax plays in. We basically help companies now that would want to do this through a third party get properly set up and configured on the eTIMS platform.
My follow-up question is, KRA has presented eTIMS to be a very simplified system that taxpayers can use and, of course, eliminate the additional costs that initially came with the Teams devices. However, it appears that it's not as straightforward to taxpayers who do not have technical expertise. What would you say about presenting it as a very simplified solution, yet it has to still have teething challenges for many taxpayers to onboard?
In terms of the simplicity or straightforwardness of the solution, from a process standpoint, the laws you referred to and the whole process around eTIMS is designed to work smoothly, when all the pieces are working together. So let me give you some examples. Previously, as a business, at the end of every month, when you're doing your periodic taxes, you need to go and fill this in manually, or you need to basically take time to prepare and upload those statements and then file and pay your taxes. One of the goals of eTIMS is to automate that process, whereby based on the receipts you're generating through Teams, which is a predecessor to eTIMS, and eTIMS itself, this information is automatically populated. And then once that is done at the end of every month or the beginning of the next month, you can then go and see what your tax amount is for various taxes like VAT, for example. The other idea here was because the law now mandates that for you to claim a tax deduction, there must be a tax invoice. The system was designed to give visibility and verification in terms of whether or not a tax invoice has been generated. When you ask for an eTIMS invoice, what people are really looking for is the QR code, which when they scan, they should be able to see that the information has reflected on KRA side. And then that gives you confidence that, the expense you wish to claim at least has been registered and you should be good for it come tax payment time. Now, as with any new system, there have been teething technical challenges. As eTIMS has rolled out, maybe due to the number of users or an issue here or there. Of course, we can't speak on behalf of KRA. It doesn't work as smoothly as expected. I think even on X, anytime eTIMS or eCitizen has an issue, you'd see a lot of people raising questions or queries or complaints saying that my eTIMS is not working, I'm having a challenge. And compounding that is the fact that also due to the laws and the policies and the regulations, eTIMS has become a crucial document in the payment journey. You have many businesses saying, I'm happy to pay you, but only when I see an eTIMS invoice. And if that delays for any reason, you can imagine the frustration people and businesses go through when trying to follow up on their payment. So those challenges are there. KRA themselves have acknowledged. And I would say it's continuous work in progress. Now, what then happens is one has to ask themselves, okay, how do I manage or mitigate these challenges? Or how do I make sure that the requirement for eTIMS does not become a drain on my time or my processes or my workflows or even the people hours we spend on such activities? So those are some of the things we've tried to address as Digitax. Systems are never perfect. They'll always have issues here and there. And what we've tried to do as Digitax is basically try manage or alleviate those challenges as much as possible. I'll give you a few examples. So the way we've designed our system, even if eTIMS is offline or unavailable for any reason, as Digitax are still able to receive and acknowledge the transaction. And then what happens on our end is we will retry that transaction when eTIMS is back online. We'll first acknowledge. We may not be able to contact eTIMS at that moment in time, but we will contact eTIMS when it's back up and then be able to show you the status of that transaction. So that's one of the things that we do. The other one is we'll always give you a digital receipt. In case, for example, you want the QR code of the validation, in case it's not available at that point in time, we'll give you a digital receipt that enables you to track the status of the eTIMS transactions. So now this is where a business has to make a decision because at the end of the day, you have free options and you may have low volume of transactions, but you may also have time sensitive or high volume transactions. And you want a solution that you feel caters to those scenarios. For us as licensed players, now that is how we would position ourselves. How do we basically give you value added services as far as eTIMS is concerned? The other thing, of course, is if you have a specific workflow or you have an ERP or a point of sale or a system that needs its own specific integration, you'd then choose to work with someone who has the capability and the ability to integrate your system to eTIMS. So there's space for different solutions depending on your use case. There are some solutions that are specific to certain industries. So it's really about how you feel you want to manage some of these eventualities. Are you looking at cost, performance, efficiency, trade-off? And how do you cater to those and which solution offers you the best option based on what you need? So that's the role we play as integrators in the eTIMS ecosystem.
Maybe you can help us understand if I need support from Digitax, how as a taxpayer and I'm a layman, be able to determine whether I need to go through the ERP integration route or I need to go through the online available system or whether the mobile app will work for me. So are you able to evaluate the taxpayers maybe by volume base or whatever parameters and determine the best solution for them?
The general process we normally recommend is first understand what your tax obligations are. So Digitax is not a tax advisor and we're not licensed to offer that service. However, once you've understood what your tax obligations are, we would then assess which solution works best for you. So as you're aware, one of the goals of eTIMS was to expand the tax base. So previously with ETR and TIMS, it was mainly geared at large taxpayers with a certain threshold or volume of turnover. But eTIMS has materially expanded that to also capture individuals. So if you're a consultant or if you're a solo entrepreneur, eTIMS is now one of the requirements. And that's why the free options on USSD and so on and so forth came along. Now, the best way to assess this is to ask yourself three questions. One is, what's the volume of transactions I process? And what's the best tool for that? As I mentioned earlier, We offer a mobile app, we offer the online web dashboard, we also offer an integration. So you'd assess your unique business environment from a volume standpoint. You'd also need to determine whether or not you want eTIMS integrated with a system you use. So typically what you find is the consultants or doctors or individual business people, they would probably not need an integration. So they'll choose maybe an app in case they want to print a physical receipt, or they'd go online to the web portal if they can email or download the invoices, if that's the option they prefer. Then the second thing that's important to consider is how many people within your business or ecosystem need access to this information. Typically, most solo traders would, for example, want to share this information with their auditor, with their accountant, or even the salesperson to generate the tax invoices. And that would be, for example, one reason to consider Digitax, because our platform is designed to be a multi-user platform. So several users can have access to the same tax account. If you wanted to use eTIMS, the main method of logging in is through your PIN and a password. So if more than one person needs to access, it means you have to share those credentials. So if you're not doing this strictly by yourself, then you'd want to consider an option that allows many users to access the same business information. And then thirdly, it's what level of audit or governance or compliance do you need within your entity? There's some businesses that mandate that there has to be an independent way to audit what has gone to eTIMS. So in that case, you need to have an intermediate solution that basically is able to receive and channel requests to eTIMS, so that you can always follow up in case any audit or governance or follow-up is required. So those tend to be the factors that inform which eTIMS solution one would need. But just to recap, the first step is to understand, either through talking to Query or through a tax professional, what are my tax obligations. You could be liable only for income tax, for example. You could be liable for income tax and value added tax, for example. As an individual, you could be liable for withholding tax. So that's usually the first step. Then determine the volume, the number of users, and the unique regulations and requirements around your business in terms of generating and transmitting tax invoices. And then from there, you can then determine which solution works best for you.
We can first explore the integration to ERPs. And by so doing, you can explain to us the different types of ERPs you've successfully managed to integrate taxpayers on eTIMS. And the second question would be, when you're doing this integration, does it then mean that the Digitax have access to a taxpayer's ERP and classified information? How does a taxpayer ensure that confidentiality of such information will be maintained by Digitax and that their information will not be misused by whichever way? So we can start with the ERPs and then on the confidentiality of information.
I think you raised some important points, especially on the second question. So in terms of ERPs or systems we've integrated, we've actually done, let's say, over 30 different systems. And the reason for that is the way we've designed our integration, it's neutral in the sense that any system can work with the integration. So we offer APIs, or what's known as application programming interface. It's a standardized way for two systems to talk to each other. And they usually standardize and accepted protocols of how system A would talk to system B through an API. So that's what we built. Now, with regards to our offering, it's available in 19 different software languages, and which covers the vast majority. You find people use a certain version of software to run their business, or the ERP is built with a certain version of software. We offer that as an option in terms of integration. In addition to that, we offer platform-specific integrations. So, for example, if you use QuickBooks, whether online or desktop, we have a module that integrates specifically with QuickBooks. We've done the same for other common ERPs like Odoo, Sage as well. So we've offered some of the main solutions, but underlying all that is our integration platform and approach, where we offer this in as many different software languages as possible. So the way we've looked at it is we have to be agnostic or neutral in terms of the solution you use to generate your invoices. And we want to give you as much offering as possible to be able to integrate and be eTIMS compliant. And we continue to add more, even in markets outside Kenya, where we do offer a similar solution. We've offered options that are relevant for that market. Now, regarding your second question around privacy and confidentiality, that's actually an important point, and we've seen it's a primary criteria by which businesses evaluate which integration partner to work with. Now, what we did as Digitax is we took a proactive approach to this. So even before we got licensed by KRA back in 2023, we actually conformed and complied with the Data Protection Act. And normally the process is you'd apply to what is known as ODPC, Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, and they would assess what you're offering, the steps and processes you have, your privacy policy, your terms and conditions. They look at a whole host of things. And then if they're satisfied and comfortable with how you've approached this, you're then issued with 2 certificates. You're issued with a data processor license and a data controller license. They're distinct in the sense that a data controller means you're managing and have visibility about certain sensitive information. And data processor means you just receive and pass through the information onto another party without actually processing or handling it. The approach we've taken as Digitax is because we handle sensitive information, we've taken a proactive approach in terms of getting licensed and ensuring we are conforming with all the regulations as per the Data Protection Act of 2019. But then even above and beyond that, it's also in our privacy policy and terms and conditions, we also indicate how we handle your data, in what circumstances we can help you manage a specific transaction, and also the security precautions we've taken in terms of managing your information. Because you're an integrator, would naturally have visibility on what you're transmitting to the tax authority. Similar to an ERP would hold your data, or even how a bank would process transactions flowing through your system. But the important thing is, have you approached this correctly from a legal standpoint? Have you invested in systems and processes to make sure that you minimize or eliminate the chance of data loss? And also to ensure that from a privacy standpoint, you've made it clear to your customers what and how you handle. There's also like regulatory requirements. So when you're licensed, there's a certain amount of time you have to hold on to information for audit and legal purposes from a KRA standpoint. So there's also that factor to consider in case of any future audit or follow-up or anything that has to be cross-verified in future. So those are the factors that inform how and when we handle customer data.
It's very important to give the taxpayers and your potential customers that confidence that their data will be handled with the highest level of legal confidentiality. Now, Caine, you mentioned that for the ERP integrations that you've managed to integrate different available softwares, maybe question on that for the different keys. The cost of integration and your admin support similar, or does it change with the type of software that a taxpayer uses?
It's generally defined by the type of solution you wish to use. For the mobile app, the handheld point of sale software, and the dashboard, the price is pretty standard. With integration, that normally needs a discussion because you need to understand a few things. Which system are you integrating with? How much support do you need during the integration process? And what volume of invoices would you wish to process? Those are the 3 factors we consider when giving you a quote if you're an integration customer. However, for the dashboard and for the apps, that's pretty standard. We also help businesses who need to clear a backlog of historical invoices. With that one, what's happened is you may start using eTIMS, like say today, but you have a backlog from January or from a previous period that you need to put on eTIMS as well. So we help you upload historical invoices onto eTIMS, and that's usually a separate service. But unless it's an integration customer, generally speaking, the fees and the costs are standardized. It's usually along those 3 pricing points.
The other thing I would want you to clarify to our listeners is that whether prior to onboarding eTIMS, if a taxpayer or a client wants to go the route of integration to their ERP, whether there are any specifications on their server for eTIMS able to work efficiently.
So we've tried to make the process as standardized as possible, and would like the process also to be as self-service as possible. So for those who are typically interested in an integration, we would offer them a few things. We'd offer them our documentation, which is public, so they can go online, look at our documentation and how to integrate. And if you're technical enough or you know how to go about integrations, it's very easy to get started because all you need to do is sign up on our dashboard. You'd create a test account, get some security keys, which you can use to map your account on Digitax with your system. And then from there, you can start testing and see how information flows. So at that point, the whole idea is to get you comfortable with how our integration would work. Of course, our team is on hand to help, but by and large, most businesses are able to figure this out on themselves if they have an IT background or they know their way around technical integrations. So at that point, of course, we would have an engagement and would try to understand your business from the three factors I mentioned earlier: the solution you're using, how much support you need, and the volume of invoices. And then we would then basically now start a commercial conversation. Once that is concluded and you're fully ready to go, you've finished up integration on your end, the process of going live is actually very easy because we would, of course, need to activate you on the eTIMS platform on KRA's end. But by and large, the integration you used during the test phase is the same one you'd use when you've gone live or your account is now actually sending real invoices. We will just change the security keys to show that you're using an actual account rather than a test account. So that's a general process from an integration standpoint. We've seen customers go live in as short as a week, especially if you're ready, you know what you're looking for, and you're keen to get going and you commit enough time and resources. So provided what you're doing and you're ready, it can be a very quick process.
Maybe from a practitioner perspective, one of the challenges I've experienced is cases where supplier has given you an invoice. The invoice appears to have been run on eTIMS or the Teams device. It has the unique QR code. But however, when I go to file my VAT return, I find a situation where the information is not available on iTax, which means the information that was transmitted did not go through fully to be able to be visible on iTax. Maybe you can explain to us whether you have encountered such problems or clients with such problems and how you've been able to help them resolve that.
A missing invoice can happen for one of two reasons. The first one is it could be missing for a genuine technical reason. Maybe they can't retrieve it from the iTax system, or for some reason they can't show it, or there's a genuine technical issue and no fault of the supplier or the buyer. The second scenario, which is a little more interesting, is I offer you a service and then I issue an eTIMS invoice, you pay me, and then you go and create a credit note. So a credit note has the effect of basically reversing that transaction on the ledger. And your supplier, the person who offered you the service or the goods, may not inform you. So from KRA's standpoint, the transaction has been reversed, but the taxpayer did not notify you. So when you go to do your returns, you find that the information is missing, but in reality, someone reversed it and did not inform you, which of course is not ideal. You can always find out, you can ask for the ledger, go through the transactions, but the time and effort to do that, and by the time you figure out who it is, it might be too late, especially if it's not a regular supplier who's interested in maintaining the business relationship. So those are some of the scenarios that could cause that. And one of the things we've done is we have an invoice verification feature where if you have an eTIMS invoice, you can put in the details and we'll be able to tell you whether that invoice is valid or genuine or not. Because, of course, the other thing we see quite a bit of is you may reuse the current eTIMS invoice, or especially the QR code on a new invoice. So most people will see the QR code, scan it, and see the information reflect whether it's unique or not, whether it's been used before. That's very hard to tell unless you're going to track previous invoices issued by that supplier or whether that QR code has been issued to you before. So those are some of the things we do as Digitax to try and manage and mitigate that issue. And of course, it's something that someone who's trying to give you a hard time will do or cut corners. So sometimes, as I said, it's due to technical issues, but sometimes people try to be creative and basically burden their tax obligations on you.
You mentioned that Digitax has gone to other countries, other markets other than Kenya. You can try to, from your experience, explain to us whether any unique challenges you've faced with the eTIMS solution in Kenya and how that compares to the experience in the other markets.
At present, we are in Kenya and Zambia. Zambia went live with their version of eTIMS in July 2024. The system is called Smart Invoice, but it's very similar to the underlying system that powers eTIMS. So there's a lot of similarity between Kenya and Zambia from a technology standpoint. Of course, there are unique factors like the tax rate, the tax regimes, how that is managed. But by and large, to what you hear as eTIMS for Kenya, the equivalent for Zambia is a smart invoice. So we joined the market last year. We were licensed by the Zambia Revenue Authority in August last year, and we've been in market since with our Digitax platform as well. And maybe to zoom out a bit, what's happening across Africa is governments want better visibility on tax receipts and what is due to them. Historically, this has been periodic and after the fact. But with the improvement in technology and access to data and information, they want this information much, much faster. As we speak, 33 countries in Africa have mandatory or voluntary e-invoicing mandates. We believe in the next 2 to 3 years, vast majority of countries in Africa would have mandatory e-invoicing mandates. But then for this to roll out, as we've seen with eTIMS, there are three things that are essential and important. The first is the laws and the regulations supporting e-invoicing in a certain country or jurisdiction. The second is the technology platform supporting electronic invoicing. So in every market you're in, for example, at the moment, we have to connect to the government systems and transmit that information. So the platform to transmit that information needs to exist. And then thirdly is now the rules and regulations around how it's governed and managed. This could either be through subsidiary legislation, it could be through policy directives or mandates from the tax authority, because that then governs how you roll out into the market, how they intend to enforce, how they intend to make sure it's successful as an initiative. So those are the three ingredients that basically inform electronic invoicing in any country or jurisdiction. So that's the state of play across the continent. Africa, more broadly speaking, is the second region in the world to really push e-invoicing. The first was Latin America. They've done this with very good success. So a lot of South American countries and Central American countries have been doing e-invoicing for quite a while. The Middle East is picking up at the moment. Europe is coming online in 2027, I believe. And so this whole movement around e-invoicing is picking up across the world gradually. But I do believe with time, many countries will come to benchmark with Africa, similar to how, there's a lot of benchmarking done around mobile money and how that works in Africa. I believe e-invoicing is one of those areas where Africa will be used as a benchmark region and, of course, case studies and how this will be adopted in other parts of the world as well.
You can maybe help us understand for Digitax, other than electronic tax invoicing, whether there are other tech solutions that you are offering to your customers and what those would be.
At the moment, we are primarily focused on e-invoicing and e-invoicing adjacent services. Invoice verification, as I mentioned, is a service we offer. We have a few products in the pipeline. We're not ready to announce them just yet. However, the whole goal is to further simplify and streamline eTIMS end-to-end. So in the next few weeks, we will be announcing some new products and initiatives that we have. But more broadly speaking, for now, we are focused on just giving businesses and individuals the best e-invoicing solution and making that whole process as simplified and as fast as possible for our customers.
The other question is for any listener who would want a solution from Digitax or would want to partner with Digitax to roll out eTIMS or get any solutions around the challenges they are facing, where can they find you or how can they reach you?
We have our platform, www.digitax.tech. We have a bit of information there. You can request a demo. You can also chat with us. There is a chat interface there. Our customer support team will be able to share with you that information. There is also various social media pages which are available on our homepage on digitax.tech. So we are on X, of course. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook. We're even on TikTok. We try to talk about Digitax and what we do there as well. And we're able to actually give you feedback in case you're deciding which option or solution works best for you. And if you sign up, you have the ability to test and understand how our platform works at no cost. And then, of course, once you're ready to go live, we can always have a commercial discussion. So those are the offerings and the various ways you can access us at this point in time.
As we come to a close, I'll give this platform to Caine to just give us a closing remark and just pitch what extra information that you would wish to reach out to your potential customers.
Thank you very much, Joe. On to the Mwango Capital team. This has been a good conversation for us to share more about what we do as Digitax. And for us, the way we see ourselves is giving businesses the easiest and fastest and most simplified way to be tax compliant. eTIMS is evolving. It's very dynamic. There are a lot of changes and updates happening. And so our role is just to ensure that whatever is going on behind the scenes, you have a solution that just works. Of course, to this end, we've invested in technology heavily. We have a team that's based here of software engineers that is in charge of building and maintaining the Digitax platform. And beyond that, of course, we know one key anchor of any business in the service industry is customer support. So we've also invested quite a bit in customer support and ensuring that is working well for our customers. Once again, thank you to Joe and the team at Wango Capital, and looking forward to the questions that will follow after this. Asante sana.
I think one very important question, Caine, that you should have clarified or maybe elaborated is how has been your experience building Digitax, and what are some of the lessons that you can pass on to bud developers in this space?
Building Digitax has been a very interesting experience. I consider it a combination of my passion to be a business person, my passion around technology as well, and the fact that I felt there was a real market need for a solution, Digitax. One of the things is people have different feelings and views about taxes. The reality is that we found them here and we will leave them here. However, in the tax compliance journey, how do you give you the easiest and most straightforward solution that helps you get on with your day, your life, and your business? To a large extent, Digitax is designed to be as simple and straightforward as possible so that it can get out of your way. Now, to achieve that from a systems and technology standpoint, you have to invest quite a lot on the back end or on the parts that the customer doesn't see to be able to make that operation as smooth as possible or something that just works. So we invested a lot in technology, and given my background, for me, it's been more around thinking through how do we make this process as easy, as smooth, and as straightforward as possible? How do we hide all the complexity behind our interface and make sure what we present to you is the easiest and most straightforward solution to use? So that's the approach we've taken. Of course, no solution is perfect. We've also learned our lessons. But I think to a large extent, customers appreciate that the value we give them is underpinned by strong technology, strong product, and good customer service. And we hope to continue that in the future. It's been an exciting journey so far, and looking forward to what the future brings.
Thank you, Caine. I believe that brings us to a close on our today's Margo Spaces session on eTIMS and the simplification of the process through using the Digitax solution. And thank you very much, our listeners, for taking time to be with us to the end. I believe we will be bringing you more Margo Spaces sessions, not specifically on taxes, but more other emerging topics as they arise. Be on the lookout on our homepage for more interesting conversation around business, tech, tax, and economics. Thank you and have a lovely evening.